Stella thought she knew the man she married. 15 years of marriage, 3 children, a lifetime spent side by side. But in a single night, in front of dozens of people, Derek looked at her and destroyed everything with cruel words. He told her she no longer had the body she used to, that she had gained weight, that she was no longer the woman he wanted. And while some laughed, Stella felt her face burn with shame and tears well up in her eyes. But what Derek didn't imagine was that this cruelty would turn into the biggest turning point in her life. There's a kind of pain that leaves no mark on the body, but cuts deeper than any wound. It's the pain of hearing from the person you love that you're no longer enough, that you've changed, that you're no longer as valuable as you once were. And when this happens in front of other people, when you see that mix of pity and embarrassment in their eyes, it's like the ground disappears from under your feet. Stella lived through this moment. She wasn't prepared. No one ever is. Because when you dedicate years of your life to raising a family, to giving up your dreams, to putting everyone else first, you don't expect to be humiliated for that very reason. You don't expect the scars motherhood left on your body to become a laughingstock. You don't expect the man who promised to love you forever to be the first to make you feel less than nothing. But this story isn't just about the pain. It's about what comes after it. It's about discovering that you're much stronger than you imagined. It's about understanding that the end of one life can be the beginning of a much better one. It's about learning that self-love isn't selfishness. It's survival. And it's about proving to yourself that you never needed anyone's approval to be amazing. Because sometimes we need to be broken to be able to rebuild ourselves the right way. Sometimes the worst night of our lives is the push we needed to finally wake up. And this is the story of how Stella transformed the greatest humiliation of her life into the greatest liberation. Before we continue, tell me, what city and country are you watching from? Leave a comment. We'd love to know where you're from. Stella stood in front of her bedroom mirror for what seemed like hours. Her navy blue dress hung on the closet door, the tag still on. She'd bought it 3 weeks ago, after browsing 5 different stores looking for something that would make her feel beautiful again. Something that would hide the parts of her body she no longer liked looking at. Something that might make Derek look at her the way he had years ago. It was Friday night, and Derek's company was hosting its annual company dinner, a large event at an Italian restaurant downtown with over 20 people confirmed. Stella didn't want to go. In fact, she'd come up with 3 different excuses in the past few weeks. She said one of the kids was sick, that she had a school commitment, that she had no one to leave the kids with. But Derek insisted so much that she finally gave in. She ran her hand over the fabric of the dress. It was beautiful, elegant. It had cost more than she thought she should, but Blair had told her she deserved it, that she needed to stop buying only clothes for the kids and think about herself every now and then. So she had. And now she stood there, looking at the dress, feeling that sinking feeling in her stomach that always came when she thought about leaving the house. Stella took a deep breath and began to get ready. She showered, applied body lotion, and carefully dried her hair. She put on makeup for the first time in weeks. Mascara, blush, a light pink lipstick. She looked in the mirror, and for a second recognized the woman she used to be, the one who enjoyed dressing up, the one who felt beautiful, the one who wasn't afraid to be seen. She put on the dress slowly. She straightened the fabric. He twirled in front of the mirror. The dress did show off her figure. It didn't hide the curves that had appeared after 3 pregnancies. It didn't hide the extra pounds she couldn't lose. But it didn't look bad either. Stella looked at herself from the side, from the front, from behind. He tried to see what Derek would see. He tried to guess what he would say. "Stella, are you ready?" Derek's voice came from the hallway. "We need to leave in 10 minutes. I'll be right there," she replied, quickly putting on her earrings. She slipped on her black heels, grabbed the small purse she'd set aside, and left the room. Derek was in the living room, scrolling through his phone, wearing that gray suit she'd always said looked good on him. When he looked up at her, Stella felt her heart race. She waited for a compliment, for a smile, for any sign that he'd noticed the effort she'd made. "You're going like that," Derek said, frowning. Stella stopped in the middle of the room. What do you mean? That dress, he waved his hand vaguely. Don't you think it's a little too tight? The words fell like stones into the silence of the room. Stella felt her face heat up. I thought it looked nice. It is, but it's tight. Derek looked back at his phone. Don't you have something else to wear? Stella stood there, in the middle of the room, feeling the weight of those words. Tight. He didn't tell her she looked beautiful. He didn't tell her he'd missed seeing her dressed up. He didn't say anything she needed to hear. He just said the dress was tight, and she knew exactly what he meant by that. No, I don't, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. This is the dress I bought for today. Derek sighed and put his phone in his pocket. Okay, let's go. We're already late. They left the house in silence. They got into the car. Derek started the engine and started driving. Stella stared out the window, watching the city lights rush by, trying to push down the lump that had formed in her throat. She wasn't going to cry. Not over a stupid comment. Not before dinner. You overdid it, didn't you? Derek suddenly spoke, still looking at the road. Stella turned her head slowly. What? The makeup. The hair. He shrugged. You don't need all that. It's just dinner with the people from work. She didn't answer. She didn't trust her own voice at that moment. She just stared back out the window, clutching her bag in her lap, feeling each word dig a hole inside her. And as the car drove through the city, Stella tried to convince herself that the night wouldn't be as bad as it seemed. She tried to believe that Derek was just nervous, that it was just work stress, that once they got to the restaurant, everything would be okay. But deep down, in the quietest place in her chest, something whispered that that night would change everything, and that nothing would ever be the same again. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone you love made you feel this small? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel using the subscribe button or the QR code that appears on your screen, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any stories like this. The restaurant was packed when they arrived. A traditional Italian restaurant with dark wooden tables, lit candles, and a constant hum of conversation and laughter. The kind of place Stella used to love. The kind of place she used to feel comfortable in. But that night, when Derek pushed open the glass door and grabbed her arm to walk in, all Stella felt was a tightness in her chest. The reserved table was in the center of the room, a huge, round table with over 20 chairs around it. People were already seated when they arrived. They were Derek's colleagues, whom Stella knew by sight. Some she'd seen at company parties years ago, others were new faces. Everyone was well-dressed, cheerful, with glasses of wine in their hands and wide smiles on their faces. Derek, finally! A man in a white shirt raised his glass when he saw them coming. We thought you weren't coming anymore. Traffic, Derek replied, smiling that way he only smiled at work. A different smile, wider, faker. But we're here. Stella, you know the guys, right? She nodded, forcing a smile as some glanced her way. Some waved back. Others just stared and continued talking. Derek pulled out a chair for her and sat beside her, already chatting with the man in the white shirt about some work project. Stella stood there quietly, fiddling with the napkin folded in front of her plate. She tried to pay attention to the conversations around her, but everything seemed distant. The laughter was too loud. The background music was irritating. And Derek was completely focused on his colleagues, as if she weren't even there, as if she were just part of the decor. Dinner began. Bread, olive oil, and wine were brought. People ordered dishes, talked about work, and told jokes Stella didn't understand. She ate little. She drank even less. She only smiled when someone looked her way and pretended to be enjoying herself. But inside, she just wanted it to be over. She wanted to go home. She wanted to take off that dress and forget that night had ever happened. And then Derek stood up. He picked up the wine glass, tapped the side with the knife, and the sound made everyone at the table stop talking and look at him. Stella felt her stomach tighten. What was he doing? Guys, can I say something? Derek spoke loudly, with that smile she no longer recognized. "Hey, Derek!" someone shouted from across the table, and a few people laughed. Derek cleared his throat and looked around, as if he were about to deliver an important speech. "I just wanted to make a toast. To all of you. To another incredible year of work. To this amazing team." He raised his glass, and everyone else did. Stella raised hers too, not quite understanding where this was going. "But I also wanted to toast my wife." Derek turned to her, still smiling. And that was when Stella noticed. She could tell by the gleam in his eyes, by the tone of his voice, by the way he held his glass. He was drunk. Not completely drunk, but drunk enough to be saying things he shouldn't have. "Stella," he pointed at her with the glass, "my wife 15 years ago. The mother of my 3 children." Some people at the table smiled. Others raised their glasses again. Stella tried to smile, but her heart was beating too fast. Something was wrong. She knew Derek. She knew his tone, and that tone wasn't affectionate. It was something else, something cruel. "You know, when I married Stella, she was different," Derek continued, swirling his glass and making the wine swirl inside. "She was a model, literally. Everyone was staring at her on the street. I had a trophy wife. You guys, a trophy." Her smile froze. The entire table fell silent. No one laughed anymore. No one knew what to say. But Derek didn't stop. But then the children came. 3, one after the other. He gave a short, awkward laugh. "Well, the body takes its toll, doesn't it? Isn't that right, Stella?" She couldn't answer. She couldn't move. She just sat there, feeling her face burn, feeling everyone's eyes at the table fixed on her. Some women looked away. Some men chuckled softly, embarrassed. But Derek wasn't finished yet. "Today I look at her and think, where did that woman I married go?" He shook his head, feigning sadness. "Because now, folks, I have a refrigerator at home. A refrigerator. It's not the wife trophy plus, it's the fridge." The silence that fell over the table was absolute. No one laughed. No one spoke. No one knew where to look. And Stella felt it. She felt the world crumble around her. She felt tears well up and fill her eyes. He felt humiliation burn through every inch of her body. He felt shame take over everything. And then she saw it. She saw some men laugh nervously. She saw a woman cover her mouth with her hand, shocked. She saw Derek sit back down, as if he hadn't done anything wrong. As if it were just a joke, just a prank. But for Stella, this was no joke. This was the end of everything. She shot up from her chair so fast she nearly knocked her wine glass over. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't say anything. She just ran. She ran between the restaurant tables, stumbling on her heels, clutching her purse tightly. People stared. Some turned their heads to see what was happening. But she didn't stop. She kept running until she reached the women's restroom at the end of the hallway. Stella pushed the bathroom door open so hard it slammed into the wall. She staggered in, holding on to the marble sink to keep from falling. The bathroom was empty. Silent. Only the sound of her breathing filled the space. She looked in the mirror and saw her face destroyed, her makeup smeared with tears, her eyes red and puffy, her lipstick smeared. She barely recognized the woman staring back. The tears wouldn't stop. They ran hot down her face, down her neck, and wet the neckline of her blue dress. She tried to take a deep breath, but no air would come in. Her chest hurt. Everything hurt. It was as if every word Derek had said had turned into a knife and cut a piece of her refrigerator. The word came back to her like an echo. He had called her a refrigerator. In front of all those people. In front of his colleagues. In front of people she barely knew. And some had laughed. Some had found funny. As if that were normal. As if humiliating your own wife was some kind of acceptable joke. Stella leaned against the sink and closed her eyes tightly, trying to stop crying. But she couldn't. She couldn't stop. Because it wasn't just about that night. It was about all the comments he'd made over the past few years, all the disapproving looks, all the comparisons to other women, all the times he'd made her feel small, ugly, inadequate. The bathroom door opened slowly. Stella opened her eyes and saw a woman entering. It was one of the women at the table. Brown hair tied back in a bun, elegant black dress. She was maybe 40. Stella couldn't remember her name. The woman stopped when she saw Stella crying in front of the sink. For a second, the two just stared at each other. Then the woman took a few steps toward her, slowly, as if afraid of startling a wounded animal. "Hey," the woman spoke softly. "Are you okay?" Stella let out a humorless laugh and wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Okay? No, I'm not okay." The woman came closer and stood beside her, looking in the mirror as well. "I saw what happened out there, what he said." Stella felt the tears come back harder. Everyone saw, everyone heard, and some even laughed. "I didn't laugh," the woman said, and her voice held a pain Stella recognized immediately. "I know exactly how you're feeling right now." Stella turned her head and looked at her. "You know?" "I know." The woman nodded, and her eyes grew moist too. "My husband does the same, not in front of everyone like yours did now, but at home, when we're alone. He talks about my body, my weight, how I don't take care of myself anymore, how I've become unattractive." She paused and took a deep breath. "He's been doing this for years. And I always thought it was my fault, that I really had changed, that I really wasn't pretty anymore." Stella felt her heart sink. "You're not the only one. Neither are you," the woman said, placing her hand on Stella's shoulder. "And it's not your fault. None of this is your fault." The two of them stood there, side by side in front of the mirror. Two women who barely knew each other, but who understood each other's pain perfectly. And in some strange way, that brought her some comfort, knowing she wasn't alone, that other women were experiencing this too, that her pain wasn't unique. "Thank you," Stella said, her voice weak but sincere. The woman squeezed her shoulder once more and then let go. "You're not going back to the table, are you?" "No." Stella shook her head. "I won't. I understand." The woman nodded. "Take care of yourself, okay? And don't let him convince you that you're the problem, because you're not." Stella watched the woman leave the bathroom. The door closed slowly, and she was alone again. But now there was something different inside her. It wasn't peace, it wasn't relief, but it was a small certainty that she didn't deserve this, that no woman did. She grabbed a paper towel, wet it with cold water, and wiped her face. She removed the rest of her smeared makeup. She fixed her hair. She took a few deep breaths until she could control her breathing. She grabbed her purse from the bathroom floor, opened it, and took out her phone. She called an Uber. The car would be there in 5 minutes. Stella left the bathroom clutching her purse tightly. She walked down the restaurant hallway toward the exit. She didn't return to her table. She didn't look back. She just kept walking, passing through the dining room, seeing from afar the table where Derek was still sitting, chatting with his colleagues as if nothing had happened. She pushed open the glass door and stepped out onto the street. The cool night air hit her face. She stood there on the sidewalk, waiting, hugging her bag to her chest. A few minutes later, the Uber arrived. A gray car parked in front of the restaurant. She quickly got into the back seat and closed the door. "You can go," she said to the driver, her voice firm for the first time that night. The drive home took 20 minutes. Stella stared out the window the whole time, watching the city lights pass by. She didn't cry anymore. She had no more tears. There was just a huge emptiness growing inside her, and a growing certainty that something had to change. When the car stopped in front of the house, she thanked the driver and got out. He unlocked the front door with his key. The house was dark and silent. The nanny was asleep in the guest room. The children were in their rooms, sleeping too. Everything was quiet. Everything was normal, as if nothing had happened. Stella took off her shoes, left her purse on the living room floor, and climbed the stairs. Each step felt heavy. She entered her bedroom, closed the door, and turned the key in the lock. She locked it. For the first time in 15 years of marriage, she locked her own bedroom door. She went to the bathroom, took off her blue dress, and threw it in the laundry basket. She removed the remaining makeup from her face. She put on a pair of old, comfortable pajamas. She lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling, waiting. She knew Derek was coming. She knew he was going to knock on the door. She knew he was going to want to come in, want to talk, want to make some lame excuse. But she wasn't going to open it. Not this time. An hour passed. Then 2. Stella remained awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. And then she heard it. The sound of the car pulling into the garage, the front door opening. His footsteps coming up the stairs, stumbling a little. He was drunk. The footsteps stopped in front of the bedroom door. Silence. And then the knocking began. "Stella?" Derek's voice came muffled from the other side of the door. "Stella, open the door." She didn't answer. She remained silent, staring at the ceiling. "Stella, stop it. Open this door." He knocked harder now. Nothing. She didn't move. She didn't say anything. "Stella!" he yelled and pounded on the door. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke. Open this damn door." But she didn't open it. She lay there, listening to him knock, listening to him curse, listening to him try and turn the doorknob over and over. And after about 10 minutes, the noises stopped. She heard his footsteps retreating down the hall. She heard the guest room door open and close, and then silence again. Stella stayed awake all night. She couldn't sleep. He lay there thinking about everything that had happened, all the years he'd wasted, all the times he'd accepted being treated like that. And for the first time, she understood she had to do something, that she couldn't go on like this. That night had been the breaking point. Stella woke up Saturday morning with her body aching. She'd slept only a few hours, lying on the same side all night, and now her neck felt stiff and her back stiff. He glanced at the clock on the nightstand. 10 a.m. The kids were probably already awake downstairs, having breakfast with the babysitter. Derek was probably still asleep in the guest room. She got up slowly, washed her face, put on a sweatshirt, and went downstairs. The children were in the living room watching cartoons. The oldest, 12-year-old Emma, looked at her when she entered. "Mom, are you okay?" Emma asked. "Your eyes are red." Stella forced a smile. "Yes, I am, love. I just slept badly." She spent the rest of the morning on autopilot. She made lunch, washed the dishes, folded laundry, everything she always did on weekends. Derek appeared in the kitchen around noon, hung over, grabbed a water from the fridge, and left without saying a word. She didn't speak to him either. She had nothing to say. It was early afternoon when her phone started ringing. First, it was a message, then another, then 3 more at once. Stella picked it up from the kitchen table and looked. Messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Messages from people she'd seen once or twice at company parties. Messages from people whose names she barely remembered. "Stella, I saw what happened yesterday. Are you okay? Hi, Stella. I'm Karen, Tom's wife. I was wondering if you needed anything. Stella, what a horrible situation yesterday. I'm here if you need to talk." She read the messages one by one, her stomach tightening. Why were all these people texting? How did they know what had happened? It wasn't just the people at the table. It was other people too. People who weren't even in the restaurant. And then came a message from an unknown number with a video attached. Stella clicked without thinking. The video loaded, and she saw it. She saw Derek standing at the front of the table, holding his wine glass. She saw him making the toast. She saw him speaking. She heard every word again. "I had a trophy wife. Now I have a refrigerator." The video had been filmed from a distance, probably by someone at another table. The quality wasn't great, but everything was audible. You could see Stella's face as the tears began to fall. You could see her get up and run away. Stella felt her world spin. Someone had filmed it. Someone had filmed the worst moment of her life and was now sending it to others. She scrolled down and saw the message that came with the video. "This is going around the company group. I thought you should know." She dropped her phone on the table as if it were on fire. She took a deep breath. She tried to calm herself. but she couldn't. The phone rang again. More messages. More people sending messages of sympathy. More people who had seen the video. More people who knew about her humiliation. Stella ran upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and lay down on her bed. She picked up her phone again and opened WhatsApp. She had 15 new messages. 15. She began reading. Stella, what he did was absurd. I saw the video. You don't deserve this. I'm sorry for what you went through. Each message was a stab, because each message meant one more person had seen it. One more person knew. One more person had watched her being destroyed in front of everyone. The humiliation hadn't stopped at that table in the restaurant. It had spread. It was everywhere now. She turned off her phone and threw it away. She lay on her side, hugged her pillow, and began to cry again. She cried until she had no more tears. She cried until her head hurt. She cried until she fell asleep from exhaustion. When she woke, it was already dark outside. She looked at the clock. 7 p.m. She'd slept for hours. She heard voices downstairs. Derek talking to the kids. The nanny tidying the kitchen. Life continued as normal while her world fell apart. Stella didn't come down for dinner. She didn't come down on Sunday either. She stayed locked in her room, lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She didn't eat. She barely drank any water. She just wanted to stay there, quiet, without having to see anyone. Without having to pretend everything was okay. On Monday morning, Derek knocked on the door. Stella, you need to get out of there. The kids are worried. She didn't answer. Stella! He hit harder. Stop this drama. It was just a stupid joke. Everyone's forgotten about it. But she knew it wasn't true. No one had forgotten. The video kept playing. The messages kept coming. And she remained there, destroyed, without the strength to get out of bed. It was Tuesday that Blair showed up. Stella heard her friend's voice downstairs talking to Derek. She heard footsteps coming up the stairs. She heard knocking on the door. Stella, it's me. Open the door. Silence. Stella, I know you're in there, and I know what happened. Derek told me. Now, open that door. Stella remained quiet, lying down, staring at the ceiling. Okay, Blair said from the other side of the door. If you don't open the door, I'll just sit here in the hallway until you do. I have all day. I have all week if I need to. Stella closed her eyes. She knew Blair wasn't bluffing. She'd known her friend for 20 years. She knew she would stay right there, sitting on the hallway floor, waiting as long as it took. She stood up slowly. Every movement hurt. She walked to the door, turned the key in the lock. It opened. Blair stood there, a shopping bag in her hand, a look on her face that mixed concern and determination. She looked at Stella, and her expression changed. It became pure pain. Oh my God, Stella. Blair walked into the room and closed the door behind her. When was the last time you ate something? Stella shrugged. She didn't remember. It didn't matter. Blair dropped the bag on the bed and took Stella's hands. I saw the video. Stella felt the tears come again. Everyone saw it. I know. Blair squeezed her hands. And I came here to tell you something. You're not going to stay locked in this room forever. You're not going to let him destroy you like this, because he doesn't deserve that power over you. I can't leave here, Blair, Stella said, her voice weak. I can't look at anyone. Everyone knows. Everyone saw it. So what? Blair said firmly. They saw Derek being an idiot. They saw him humiliating his own wife. If anyone should be ashamed here, it's him, not you. Stella shook her head. It's not that simple. I know it's not. Blair released her hands and opened the bag she'd brought. She took out a sandwich, a bottle of juice, and a piece of fruit. But the first thing you're going to do is eat. Then you're going to shower. And then we're going to talk, really, about what you're going to do now. Stella looked at her food and realized she was hungry. Really hungry. She picked up the sandwich and took a bite. It was good. It was great. She ate it all in silence while Blair sat on the bed next to her. You can't stay like this, Blair said quietly. I understand the pain. I understand the shame. But you need to react. You need to get out of this bed and do something. Because if you stay here a few more days, you won't be able to get out. Stella finished eating and looked at her friend. I don't know what to do. I know, Blair said. You're going to take a shower. You're going to get dressed. And tomorrow, you're going somewhere with me. What place? A therapist, Blair replied. A friend of mine. She's amazing. And you need to talk to someone about all of this. Someone who can help you understand what you're feeling. Stella was about to refuse. She was about to say she didn't need therapy. But then she looked around the room. She saw the clothes thrown on the floor. She saw the closed curtains. She saw the state she was in, and she realized Blair was right. She needed help, because alone, she couldn't get out of this hole. On Wednesday morning, Blair returned to pick up Stella. She had scheduled her therapist appointment for 10 o'clock. Stella showered, put on jeans and a simple blouse, and went downstairs for the first time in days. Derek was in the kitchen drinking coffee. He glanced at her as she passed, but didn't say anything. Neither did she. The office was in a building downtown. On the third floor, a small but cozy room with comfortable armchairs, plants on the shelves, and soft light streaming in through the window. The therapist's name was Dr. Helen. She was a woman in her 50s, with short gray hair, red-framed glasses, and a kind smile. Stella, it's a pleasure to meet you. Dr. Helen shook her hand. Blair told me a little about your situation, but I'd like to hear from you, in your own time. No rush. Stella sat in the armchair and was quiet for a while. She didn't know where to begin, but then she took a deep breath and spoke. She talked about dinner, about Derek's words, about the humiliation, about the video, about the days locked in her room. Doctor. Helen listened to everything without interrupting. When Stella finished, the therapist put the notepad aside and looked at her. Stella, what your husband did was emotional abuse, publicly humiliating you like that wasn't a joke. It was a form of control, of making you feel small. The words fell heavily in the silence of the room. Emotional abuse. Stella had never thought of it that way. But it wasn't just that night, was it? Dr. Helen continued. Tell me, how does he treat you on a daily basis? And that's when Stella really started talking. Her first pregnancy came to mind. How much weight she'd gained. And Derek started making comments. You're eating too much. Be careful not to get too fat. As if her body existed solely to please him. After Emma was born, she killed herself at the gym trying to lose weight quickly. And yet Derek told her she could do more. That other women returned to their normal body shape within 3 months. During her second pregnancy, he compared her to other women on the street. Look at that one over there, 3 kids and she has an incredible body. My boss's wife is your age and looks 25. As if she were never enough. The third pregnancy was the hardest. Gestational diabetes, mandatory bed rest. And Derek complained that the house was messy, that the food wasn't good. As if caring for 2 small children while having a high-risk pregnancy wasn't enough. In recent years, Derek had always found a flaw. Her hair was too short or too long. Her clothes were worn. She didn't cook enough or cooked too much and wasted money. Nothing she made was ever good enough. And in the midst of all this, Stella, doctor. Helen asked softly, Who are you? Stella opened her mouth to respond and couldn't, because she didn't know. She'd lost it along the way. She'd left pieces of herself behind in every attempt to please Derek. I don't know, Stella said, her voice cracking. I don't know who I am anymore. This is very common in abusive relationships. The person gradually loses their own identity. They mold themselves to what their partner wants. And in the end, they look in the mirror and no longer recognize themselves. Stella felt the tears well up. That was exactly it. Did you have dreams, Stella? Before you got married? Before you had kids? What did you want to do with your life? I wanted to be an interior designer, Stella said slowly. I loved decorating. I loved transforming spaces. I had even started a technical course. But then I met Derek. We got married. My first pregnancy came, and I dropped everything. Did he ask you to leave? Not directly, but he always made it clear that he thought it was nonsense, that I was wasting my time, that I should focus on my family, and I believed him. Dr. Helen was quiet for a moment. And now, Stella, do you still think he was right? No, I don't think so. So tell me something. If you could do anything right now, without worrying about what he'll think, what would you do? I would finish that degree. I would go back to working on what I love. I would stop living the life he wants and start living my own life. Then why don't you do it? Because I'm afraid. The words came out quickly. Afraid of starting over. Afraid of being alone. Stella, look at me. He's not right. What he did wasn't a joke. It was cruel. And you're not exaggerating. You're finally starting to see things as they really are. The session ended an hour later. Stella left the office with a strange feeling in her chest, a small clarity, a beginning of understanding. Blair was waiting at the reception. So, how was it? It was good. It was very good. Are you coming back? Yes, I will. Because for the first time, she understood that the problem wasn't with her. It never had been. 2 weeks after her first therapy session, Stella sat in the waiting room of a law firm. Her hands were sweating coldly. Her heart was pounding. She had made that appointment alone, without telling anyone, not even Blair, because if she did, it would become real, and part of her was still afraid it was real. The secretary called her name. Stella, Dr. Marcus can see you now. She got up and walked into the office. The lawyer was a man in his 60s, with neatly cropped gray hair and an impeccable dark suit. He shook her hand and pointed to the chair in front of his desk. So, Stella, tell me, what brings you here today? She took a deep breath. I need to understand my rights. In a separation. Dr. Marcus picked up a pen and notepad. How long have you been married? 15 years. Do you have children? 3. 12, 9, and 6 years. Do you work outside? Stella shook her head. No, I stopped when the first one was born. I take care of the house and the children. The lawyer made some notes. And your husband? What is his profession? Sales manager at a technology company. He makes good money. Do you have assets in common? House, car, savings? The house is in both of our names. We have 2 cars. And there must be some money saved, but I'm not sure how much. Derek has always taken care of the finances. Dr. Marcus stopped writing and looked at her. Stella, you need access to this information. Bank statements, investments, tax returns, everything. You're entitled to half of everything built during the marriage. Half? Stella repeated, surprised. Half, he confirmed. The law protects you in that regard. You gave up your career to care for your family. That has value, and in a separation, you're entitled to compensation for that. Stella felt something strange in her chest. It wasn't relief. It was more like hope. Small, fragile, but there. And the children? She asked. You'll need to determine custody. It could be shared or exclusive. But considering their ages and the fact that you're the primary caregiver, it's very likely that you'll have primary custody and he'll have visitation on the weekends. And he'll have to pay alimony? Yes, child support is mandatory. And you can also ask for support for yourself, at least until you can get back on your feet financially. Stella spent the next hour asking questions. Dr. Marcus patiently explained everything, the documents she needed to gather, the steps of the process, the time it would take. And the more he talked, the more Stella realized she had more power than she realized. She wasn't trapped. She had options. When she left the office, the sun was bright outside. Stella stopped on the sidewalk and took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe properly. In the following days, she began to move in. He opened a bank account in her name alone. He took all the important documents from the house and stored them in a safe place. He began attaching expense receipts, statements, anything he might need later, and he started looking for a job, or at least thinking about the possibility. He opened the laptop he hadn't used in years and updated his resume. He visited job boards. He looked for online interior design courses. He researched how much it would cost to complete the degree he'd abandoned. Derek noticed the changes. Of course he did. It started on a Thursday night. Stella was in the kitchen preparing dinner when he got home from work. Instead of going straight to his room as he had for the past few weeks, he walked into the kitchen and stood there, watching her. "You look different," he said. Stella didn't turn around. She continued chopping vegetables. "Different in what way?" "I don't know. More tidy." "Did you dye your hair?" "I dyed it." She'd gone to the salon for the first time in months. She'd covered up the gray hairs that were showing. She'd trimmed the ends. She felt she deserved it. "It looks nice," Derek said, his voice holding that familiar tone, the tone he used when he wanted something. "It's been a while since you've dressed up like that." Stella didn't answer. She just continued cooking. "I was thinking," he continued, "we could go out this weekend, just the two of us, like a date. It's been a while since we did that." "No, thank you," Stella said, without looking at him. Silence. Derek hadn't expected that answer. "What do you mean, no?" "I don't want to go out with you." She turned and looked at him for the first time. "Not now." His expression changed. The false kindness vanished. "Oh, I see. Are you going to sulk forever about that night?" "It's not a tantrum, Derek." "Then what is it?" He raised his voice. "I already apologized. What more do you want?" "You didn't apologize," Stella said calmly. "You said I was exaggerating, that it was just a joke. That's not an apology." Derek ran a hand through his hair nervously. "Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry now." "I shouldn't have said that in front of everyone." "You shouldn't have said that anywhere," Stella corrected. "In front of everyone or alone. You shouldn't have called me a refrigerator. You shouldn't have humiliated the body that carried your 3 children." "Stella, for God's sake." He rolled his eyes. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill." And there it was, the mask slipping, the false kindness turning to impatience, turning to anger, turning to the same old thing. "You know what your problem is," Derek continued, stepping closer. "You can't take criticism. Every little thing I say, you take personally. You're too sensitive. Or you're too cruel," Stella replied, and her voice didn't tremble. Derek stood there, staring at her as if he were seeing a different person. "Who's putting these ideas in your head? Is it Blair? Is it that therapist?" "Nobody's putting anything in my head, Derek. I'm just starting to see things as they really are." "And what are they like?" he asked, crossing his arms. Stella turned off the stove and turned to him completely. "The way it always was. You treating me badly, making me feel small, controlling me. And I accepting it because I thought it was love. But it's not. Never was. You're crazy." Derek shook his head. "You're completely crazy. I give you everything. A beautiful house. You don't have to work. The kids have everything they need, and you tell me I treat you badly." "Giving me things isn't the same as treating me well," Stella said. "But you'll never understand that." Derek was silent for a moment. Then he gave an awkward laugh. "You think you can live without me? You haven't worked in 15 years. You have no career. You have no money of your own. You need me." And that's when Stella realized. He was scared. Scared of losing control over her. Scared she'd leave. That's why he tried being kind first. And when that didn't work, he went back to his usual ways, trying to make her feel small, trying to make her believe she was weak, that she was dependent, but she was no more. She was not going to be anymore. "You're wrong, Derek," Stella said softly but firmly. "I don't need you. I just thought I did." And that's the difference. She left the kitchen and went upstairs, leaving him standing there alone. And for once, she had the last word. On Friday afternoon, Stella was in the living room organizing some documents when she remembered she needed to print her updated resume. Derek had left early for work, and the kids were at school. The house was quiet. She went up to her office. The small room where the computer they shared was located. She turned on the machine and waited for it to load. She opened the resume file and sent it to print. While waiting for the pages to come out of the printer, she accidentally moved the mouse and the screen changed. Derek's email was open there. He'd forgotten to log out. Stella was about to close it. She was going to walk away and pretend she hadn't seen it. But then her eye fell on a recent message. Her name was there. Stella, written in the middle of a conversation with a coworker. She clicked without thinking. The message was 3 days old. Derek was writing to his friend, Tom. Man, I can't take it anymore. Stella is impossible. She's always sullen. She doesn't do anything right around the house anymore. She's sloppy, lazy. She's always complaining. I feel trapped in this marriage because of the kids. Stella felt her stomach churn. She read it again, sloppy, lazy, stuck. She scrolled up. There were more messages, many more. She began reading them one by one, and each one was worse than the last. A message to another colleague, Mark, from 2 months ago. Stella's gained so much weight, man. I don't know what to do anymore. I've tried dropping hints, but she just won't get it. Another message, this time to his boss, Richard. Sorry I can't stay for happy hour again. Stella won't let me. She's very controlling. Lie. She had never stopped him from doing anything. Never. Stella continued reading. There were conversations from 6 months ago. From a year ago, he'd been bad-mouthing her for so long. Behind her back, while at home he pretended everything was normal. And then she saw it. Messages with women's names, Sarah, Jessica, Amanda, conversations that weren't professional. They were something else. A message for Sarah. You look beautiful today. That red dress looks amazing on you. Sarah's response, thank you, you look good today too. Could we grab coffee after work? Derek, I'd love to, but it has to be discreet, you know. Stella felt her hands tremble. She kept reading. There was more. From Jessica. Even worse, messages, compliments, flirtations, invitations to lunch, to coffee, to after-work drinks. A recent message from 2 weeks ago to Amanda. My wife doesn't understand me anymore. Sometimes I think about how different things would be if I had married someone like you. Stella put down the mouse. She got up from her chair. She walked to the other side of the office. She took a deep breath. She tried to process everything she had just read. He wasn't just bad-mouthing her. He was cheating. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. He was seeking attention from other women. He was flirting. He was telling her he felt trapped, that she was the problem, that she was sloppy, lazy, controlling. All lies, all designed to make him look like the victim, to make her look like the villain. Stella went back to the computer. She grabbed her phone and started photographing the messages, one by one. Every conversation with Tom, Mark, Richard, every message with Sarah, Jessica, Amanda. She photographed everything. Because she knew she'd need it. She knew Derek would deny it. He'd say she was making it up. He'd try to turn the tables, but this time she had proof. When she finished, she closed her email, turned off her computer, and went downstairs. She sat on the living room couch with her phone in hand, looking through the photos she'd taken. She read them all again, and this time, instead of pain, she felt something else. Anger. Anger at having wasted 15 years with a man who spoke of her that way to others. Anger at having believed him when he said he loved her. Anger at having blamed herself for not being enough when the problem was never her. But along with the anger came something stronger. Determination. A determination she'd never felt before, because now she knew the complete truth. And the truth, painful as it was, had given her what she needed. The absolute certainty that she was doing the right thing, that Derek didn't deserve another day of her life, that it was over. And when you realize someone never truly valued you, it's easier to walk away, because you're not losing anything. You're freeing yourself. Have you ever discovered something about someone that completely changed the way you saw them? How did you deal with it? Tell us in the comments. Their 15th wedding anniversary arrived on a sunny Saturday. Derek had insisted on having dinner at home. Nothing big, he said. Just close family and a few friends, about 20 people, tops. It's to show that everything is okay, he had said the week before, that we've gotten over that misunderstanding, that our marriage is strong. Stella had said she didn't want anything, that she had nothing to celebrate, but Derek didn't take no for an answer. He ordered food, bought drinks, tidied up the house. He did everything without asking her opinion. He invited her parents, her sister, some nearby neighbors, and of course, the coworkers who were at the restaurant that night. On Thursday before dinner, Blair showed up at Stella's house. "Are you going to that dinner?" Blair asked. "I have no choice. It's in my house." "Then use it to your advantage," Blair said, and her eyes lit up. "You have the proof. You have the divorce papers ready. He wants to put on a show. Let him, and then you steal the show." Stella looked at her friend. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely." Blair took her hands in his. "He humiliated you in front of everyone in that restaurant. Now you're going to defend yourself in front of everyone. You're going to expose him for who he really is, and you're going to walk away from this with your head held high." Stella thought hard, and then she agreed. On Saturday afternoon, the house began to fill with people. Stella dressed in a simple but elegant black dress. She tied her hair up. She put on light makeup. She put the divorce papers in an envelope in the kitchen drawer, where only she knew. People arrived and greeted her. Stella's parents, her sister, some neighbors, and Derek's colleagues from the restaurant. Some looked at her with pity. Others pretended nothing had happened. Derek was in the living room, laughing loudly, telling jokes, being the perfect host. At 7 o'clock, when everyone had arrived and were in the living room and on the porch, Derek tapped a glass with a spoon. The sound stopped the conversation. Everyone looked at him. "Guys, can I have your attention for a minute?" Derek spoke up, smiling that wide, fake smile. People gathered around. Stella stood near the kitchen, watching. "Today is a very special day," Derek began. 15 years ago, I married the woman of my life, Stella." He pointed at her, and everyone looked. She didn't smile. She just stared back. "These 15 years have been the best of my life," Derek continued, his voice growing emotional. "Fake. Totally fake. Stella gave me 3 beautiful children. She built a wonderful home. She's the best wife a man could ask for." Some people started to smile. Others looked uncomfortable. Everyone remembered the video. Everyone knew what had happened. "I know we've been through some tough times recently," Derek said, looking around. "I've made mistakes. I've said things I shouldn't have. But the important thing is that we've gotten through it, because our love is strong. Our marriage is strong." He walked toward Stella, opening his arms. "Come here, love. Come get your birthday hug." Stella didn't move. "Stella?" Derek spoke louder, still smiling but with narrowed eyes. "Come here." She walked, slowly. She passed through the circle of people. Everyone was watching. And when she reached Derek, before he could hug her, she snatched the microphone from his hand. "Thank you, Derek." Stella spoke into the microphone, her voice clear and firm. "Thank you for that beautiful speech. But I'd also like to say a few things." Derek tried to take the microphone back. "Stella, you don't have to." She pulled away. "Yes, you do." She looked around, seeing all those faces staring at her. Her family, her friends, Derek's colleagues, the same people who had seen the video. 15 years ago, I got married thinking I had found my partner, my companion, the person who would love and respect me for the rest of my life. Absolute silence in the room. But I was wrong, Stella continued. Because for the past 15 years, I haven't been loved. I've been controlled. I've been disrespected. I've been humiliated. Every time I gained pregnancy weight, Derek would make comments. Every time I tried to do something for myself, he would discourage me. And when I finally got ready to go out with him, in front of all of you, he called me a refrigerator. Some people lowered their heads. Others covered their mouths with their hands. "But it doesn't stop there," Stella said, feeling anger rise inside her. Good anger. Liberating anger. Because this week I discovered something. I discovered that for months, Derek has been bad-mouthing me to his co-workers, calling me sloppy, lazy, saying he's stuck in this marriage because of the kids. Derek turned pale. Stella, stop. No, she raised her hand. You had your turn to speak. Now it's mine. And I also discovered that he's been flirting with several women at work, texting, setting up dates, saying that his wife doesn't understand him anymore. Murmurs began to spread through the room and onto the balcony. The 20 people present looked at Derek with shock, with disapproval. So, Derek, Stella turned to him. You want to know what I think of these 15 years of marriage? I think they were 15 years wasted with a man who never deserved me. 15 years trying to be perfect for someone who only knew how to point out my flaws. 15 years believing that the problem was me, when the problem was always you. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. She let them fall, because those tears were tears of release. And I came here today, in front of all of you, to say one thing. She took a deep breath. I want a divorce. The room erupted in whispers. Derek stood there, white-faced, speechless. Stella left the room and went to the kitchen. She opened the drawer. She took out the envelope. She came back, and in front of 20 people, his family and colleagues, she handed Derek the divorce papers. It's all here. You just need to sign. Derek looked at the envelope in his hands like it was a bomb. You can't do this. I just did, Stella said. She grabbed her bag from the couch. She turned to her mother, who had tears in her eyes. Mom, will you watch the kids tonight? I need to get out of here. Her mother nodded. Stella walked to the door. Everyone made way for her. No one said anything. They just watched her pass by, head held high, shoulders back, with a strength she didn't know she possessed. When she reached the door, she stopped and turned around one last time. Oh, and Derek. She spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. It's your party. Enjoy it. Because the house won't be there anymore. And she left. She closed the door behind her, got in her car, and drove away. While behind her, inside that house, Derek stood there in the middle of the living room, holding the divorce papers, completely exposed, completely destroyed, in front of everyone he'd tried to impress. And for the first time in 15 years, Stella felt free. The first few months after that night were the hardest of Stella's life. She rented a small 2-bedroom apartment near the children's school. She took only the essentials, clothes, some furniture, their toys. The rest was left behind, including 15 years of a life she no longer recognized as her own. The divorce proceedings she had initiated became more complicated after that night. Derek, furious and humiliated, hired an expensive lawyer and began trying to turn everything in his favor. He contested custody of the children. He said Stella had abandoned the home, that she couldn't care for them alone, that he deserved primary custody because he had a stable income and she didn't have a job. But Dr. Marcus was prepared. He presented the evidence. Derek's messages bad-mouthing her, the flirtations with other women, the video of the humiliation at the restaurant, everything. And when the judge saw it, the story changed. Stella got primary custody of the children, Derek got visitation on alternate weekends, and he would have to pay child support. Both for the children and for her, until she re-estabilized financially. It was a victory. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like exhaustion. It felt like exhaustion from having to prove, in court, that she didn't deserve to be treated that way. The children were confused at first. Emma, the oldest, asked a lot of questions. Why don't we live with Daddy anymore? Are you going back? Was it my fault? Stella sat with them every night and explained. Carefully, lovingly. She told them it wasn't anyone's fault, that sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions, that she and their father still loved them, but they couldn't live together anymore, and that it was okay, that everything would be okay. It took time, but little by little, the children began to notice something. Their mother was different, lighter, more present, happier. She played with them more. She laughed more. She no longer stayed locked in her room crying. She no longer walked around the house with that empty, tired look in her eyes. "Mom, you look prettier," Emma said one day, out of the blue. Stella looked at her daughter, surprised. "Really? Seriously, you're actually smiling now." And it was true. Stella was actually smiling, because for the first time in years, she was living her life. Not the life Derek wanted her to live. Hers. 3 months after the separation, Stella went back to school. She found an online interior design course and enrolled. She studied at night, after the kids were asleep. She did her homework. She attended classes. And for the first time in 15 years, she was doing something just for herself. The course lasted 6 months. When she finished, she put together a simple portfolio with some projects she had completed during the classes. And she started looking for work. The first interview was at a small interior design company. Stella was nervous. Her hands were sweating. Her heart was racing. She hadn't worked in 15 years. She didn't know if she still knew how to do it, if she was still any good at it. But when the company's owner, a woman named Patricia, saw her portfolio, her eyes lit up. "You have talent, Stella, real talent." "Thank you," Stella said, and felt tears well up. Because no one had spoken to her like that in so long. No one had acknowledged her worth in so long. "When can you start?" Stella started the following week. The salary wasn't high, but it was hers. Money she earned through her own work, through her own talent. And that was worth more than anything. At work, she discovered she was good. Really good. Clients loved her projects. Patricia began giving her larger projects. And within a few months, Stella was already completing complete house and apartment renovations. She woke up every day wanting to work, wanting to create, wanting to live. And that was new. That was incredible. But the most surprising thing came from elsewhere. A few weeks after that birthday dinner, Stella started receiving messages. Messages from women she barely knew. Some were wives of Derek's colleagues who were there that night. Others were neighbors. Others were friends of friends who had heard about what had happened. All saying the same thing: "Thank you. Thank you for having the courage to confront him in front of everyone. Thank you for showing me that we don't have to accept being treated like this. Thank you for speaking out loud what so many of us go through in silence." One of the messages was from the woman in the bathroom, the one who had found Stella crying that night at the restaurant. "Stella, I left him. After seeing you take that microphone and expose everything in front of everyone, I understood that I could do it too, that I deserved more too. You gave me courage." Stella cried when she read that message. He cried because he realized her pain hadn't been in vain, that by exposing what Derek did, she had helped other women see their own situations, to understand they weren't crazy, that they weren't exaggerating, that they were victims of emotional abuse and deserved to get out. Blair showed up at her apartment on a Saturday afternoon, bringing pizza and wine. "So, how are you?" Blair asked, as the two ate in the small but cozy room. Stella thought, really thought, "I'm fine, really. I'm tired. I'm struggling, but I'm fine." "Do you regret it? Leaving?" Stella shook her head. "Never. Not for a second. I only regret not leaving sooner." "You weren't ready before," Blair said. "You had to go through all that to get here, to be strong enough to leave." "Maybe," Stella took a sip of wine, "but now I'm here, and for the first time in 15 years, I know who I am. I know what I want, and I know I deserve more than he gave me." "You always deserved it, Stella. I know that now." She smiled. It took a while. "But I know." That night, after Blair left and the kids were asleep, Stella sat on the couch in her small apartment, looking around. It wasn't the big house she'd had before. It didn't have the expensive furniture. It didn't have the huge backyard. But it was hers, completely hers. And there was something about this space that her old house never had. Peace. True peace. Peace in not having to tiptoe. Peace in not being afraid of criticism. Peace in being able to be herself without fear of judgment. Peace in knowing that her children were growing up seeing a strong, independent mother who didn't tolerate being mistreated. And that was worth it all. It was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every difficult moment of separation, because in the end, she had achieved. He had freed himself. He had rebuilt his life from scratch. And he was happy, happy truth. And Derek was alone. Alone in that big house. Alone with his anger and wounded pride. Alone realizing too late that he had lost the best thing he had ever done. He had. 2 years passed. 2 years that felt like a lifetime, and yet flew by. Stella stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the necklace she'd just put on. It was a Saturday night, and she was going to Emma's dance performance at school. She looked at her reflection and smiled. It wasn't the same forced smile from years ago. It was a real smile of a woman who had found peace. Not perfect peace, because life is never perfect, but true peace. The peace of someone who knows who they are and what they deserve. Stella hadn't changed physically to please anyone. She still had the curves of her 3 pregnancies. She still had the marks on her body that motherhood had left. But now she looked at those marks with affection, with respect, because they were the marks of a war she had won. They were proof that she had built 3 lives within herself and had survived to tell the tale. "Mom, are you ready?" Emma called from the living room. "I'm coming." Stella grabbed her bag and went downstairs. The 3 children were in the living room. Emma was in her dance uniform. The other 2 were already dressed as well. And beside them, waiting with a gentle smile on his face, was James. James had appeared in Stella's life a year after their separation. He was an architect and had hired her firm to design a project for the interiors. They worked together for 3 months. And during that time, Stella noticed something different about him. James asked her opinion. He listened to what she said. He valued her ideas. When she suggested something, he considered it carefully. When she talked about the children, he truly listened. And when she laughed, he smiled too, as if her happiness mattered to him. It took Stella a while to agree to go out with him, because she was afraid of getting hurt again, afraid of making another mistake, afraid of making the wrong choice again. But James was patient. He respected her time. He didn't pressure her. He didn't demand anything. He just stood there, showing her every day, with small gestures, that she could trust him. And she trusted. Slowly, carefully, but she trusted. Now, 2 years after the separation, Stella knew what it meant to be truly loved. It meant to be respected. It meant having someone who celebrated her victories instead of belittling them. It meant having someone who looked at her and saw an incredible woman, not a list of flaws. "Shall we?" James asked, extending his hand to her. "Let's go." They arrived at school at 7 o'clock. The auditorium was full of parents, mothers, families. Stella walked in with James and the kids, looking for places to sit. And that's when she saw Derek. Derek was there, alone, sitting in the back row, staring at his phone. He looked different, visibly older. His hair was starting to gray at the sides. His face was more lined, his shoulders hunched. He seemed smaller somehow, less imposing, less threatening. Stella knew, because the children had told her, that Derek's life hadn't been easy after that night. He had lost many friends. People at the company began to look at him differently after the messages leaked. He ended up quitting and moving to another city. He sold the big house and was living in a small apartment on the other side of town. And the children hardly wanted to visit him on the weekends. They went because the judge had ordered it. But they weren't happy. They always came back relieved. Derek looked up from his phone and saw Stella. For a second, their eyes met. She saw something there. Sadness, maybe. Regret. Loneliness. He stood up and started walking toward her. Stella stood still, James beside her, the children already running to find their friends. "Hi, Stella," Derek said as he approached. "Hey, Derek." An uncomfortable silence. He looked at James, then back at her. "You're fine." "Different, but fine. Thanks. Derek began and stopped. He ran a hand through his hair nervously. "I wanted to talk to you. About us." Stella crossed her arms. "We don't exist anymore, Derek." "I know. But I was thinking. It's been 2 years. Maybe we could try again. Start over. From scratch. I've changed, Stella. I swear I have." She looked at him. Really looked. And saw a broken man. A man who had lost everything and now wanted back what he had destroyed. But she also saw something else. She saw that he hadn't changed. Not really. Because if he had, he wouldn't be standing there asking for a second chance. He would be apologizing. He would be acknowledging what he had done. He would be saying he understood how much he had hurt her. But he wasn't saying any of that. He was just wanting to get back together, wanting her to forget, wanting her to pretend nothing happened. "Derek," Stella said, and her voice was calm, firm. "I'm not getting back together with you, ever. Stella, please." "No." She held up her hand. "Listen, I'm going to tell you something. And I need you to understand. You didn't destroy me that night at the restaurant. You freed me. Because it was that night that I finally saw who you really were. And it was that night that I decided I deserved more." Derek remained silent, looking at her. "In the last 2 years," Stella continued, "I've rebuilt my life. I've gone back to working at what I love. I've raised my children alone, and they're happy. I've learned to love myself again. And I've found someone who treats me the way I always deserved to be treated." She took James's hand and intertwined her fingers with his. "Then I'm not going back, Derek. Because I don't need you. I never did. I just thought I did. And that's the difference." Derek opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "But I want to thank you," Stella said, and she meant it. "I want to thank you for showing me exactly what I will no longer accept in my life, for teaching me, in the worst possible way, my own worth. Because without you, I wouldn't have discovered how strong I am." She released James's hand and extended it to Derek. A handshake. Formal. Final. "Good luck, Derek. Really. I hope you find the peace I found, but it won't be with me." Derek looked at her hand. He hesitated, and then he squeezed, quickly, weakly. Stella turned and walked with James to the front seats. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because that chapter of her life was over, truly over. The performance began. Emma danced beautifully. The other children applauded. Stella held James's hand and smiled. A complete smile. The smile of someone who had been through hell and come out the other side in one piece. When they left the auditorium after the performance, Derek was already gone. Stella didn't even notice. She was too busy celebrating with her children, too busy living in the present, too busy being happy. Because the truth is simple. Sometimes we need to be broken to be able to rebuild ourselves the right way. Sometimes the worst night of our lives is the beginning of the best version of ourselves. And sometimes the end of one story is the beginning of a much better one. Stella had found this better story, and she wasn't going to let anything or anyone take it away from her ever again. Stella's story isn't just about a marriage that ended. It's about a woman reborn. It's about understanding that true love never humiliates, never diminishes, never makes you feel less than you are. Stella spent 15 years of her life believing the problem was her, that if she changed enough, if she was perfect enough, Derek would finally see it. But the truth is, he always saw it. He just chose to use it against her. And that's the difference between someone who loves you and someone who controls you. What Stella learned on this journey is worth more than any marriage. She learned that no one has the right to make you feel small, that the marks on your body tell stories of strength, not failure, that starting over isn't about giving up, it's about having the courage to choose yourself, and that sometimes the greatest proof of self-love is knowing when to walk away. Today, Stella wakes up every day knowing who she is. She works at what she loves. She raises her children in a respectful environment, and she finally understands what it means to be truly loved. Not for the person Derek wanted her to be, but for the person she's always been. If you're going through something similar, if someone in your life makes you feel like you're not enough, pay attention. Because you are enough. You always have been. And you deserve someone who sees that too. The moral of this story is simple. You don't have to be perfect to deserve respect. You don't have to change who you are to be loved. And you should never, ever accept crumbs from someone when you deserve the whole feast. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between staying in a place that hurt you or having the courage to start over? Tell us in the comments. Your story might help someone going through the same thing right now. If this story touched you in any way, like the video here, subscribe to our channel using the subscribe button or the QR code that appears on your screen, and activate the notification bell to continue receiving life-changing stories like this.